Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. McKendree, welcome to the Principal Podcast. Happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It is my pleasure. All right, let's jump straight into it. What's the story, McKendree? What got you into organizational development in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you asked my mom when I was really young, I told her that I wanted to be a motivational speaker. And she was like, well, you kind of have to have like a story to tell. And I was like, all right, well, let me go develop one. So I say that in a little tongue in cheek, but I've always just been like fascinated by humans and really wanting to understand the psychology of people and what makes people motivated, what kind of makes them tick. And I didn't even know that industrial organizational psychology was a thing that existed in the world. But after I got out of undergrad, I was looking at psychology programs and read the description of a IO psychology graduate program and was like, just kind of one of those light bulb moments. And I think what really captured my attention was this idea that we spend so much of our adult life at work that it shouldn't suck. And I was really, I think, compelled by that. I don't know if I saw a lot of models in my childhood and growing up of people who really were super passionate about their careers. And so I think that's what piqued the interest. And ultimately, I think really was drawn to the leadership development space because I just, at that time in life, felt like I was really compelled by the idea that leaders should do better and they should be held to greater accountability. And I would say as I've gone throughout my career, there's been nuance added to that. The more leadership roles I've held myself, I think the more I recognize the weight of leadership as well. And I think that's really rounded out of, yes, that accountability component, but also this desire to support leaders who are carrying the weight of so much complexity. So that's what kind of really got me into it. And I would say what's really kept me in this field over the years.
Love this. All this leading to NextArrow, right? So what is the problem that you guys help solving with NextArrow? What is it that you're helping people achieve, basically?
Yeah, I like to distill our work down to kind of two areas that we can really help people with. And it's either a capability gap or a courage gap. And what I mean by that, so we offer both coaching as well as training for organizations. And oftentimes when I think about the coaching space, a lot of the leaders that we are working with, there's some type of gap, right? They're stuck in some capacity. And it might be that they just transition to a more senior role and they don't know how to do that well. It might be that everything they've been doing in the past is no longer working for them. And I find that the work we get to do in that kind of one-on-one space is really helping them recognize either the skill that they need to change. And in that case, it's offering super simple frameworks and tools and tactics. In other cases, it's really giving them that nudge and that encouragement to really figure out what is keeping them from doing the thing they know they need to do. And so I think it's both kind of the capability and courage in the coaching space. And then in the training space, I find that it's really about organizations who are truly committed to learning and they know that their team's learning and growing is their competitive advantage. And so we come in to help really upskill those leaders and develop common language and again, common frameworks across the business so folks can actually operate in a much more effective and kind of simplified way together.
Makes a lot of sense. Is there a particular niche, industry, company size that you're typically helping? Who is NextArrow working with typically?
Yeah, we have been very intentional about actually diversifying our clientele. So, this week alone, I'm working with a food and beverage company and also a construction company and also a fintech company. And so I would say from an industry perspective, we have been very deliberate and intentional about that diversification. That being said, I would say a majority of our clients probably fall into the bucket of 500 employees up to 2,000, and often in stages of rapid growth or rapid change. And they know that they really need some additional partnership and support to kind of come alongside them. But it's been really fun for me because one of my clients is like an 80-plus-year-old manufacturing company. And then at the other time, like a rapidly growing fintech company in New York. So it's kind of a really fun spread in that way.
So the question I always have when there is such a diverse landscape of portfolio companies is, what's the common thread then? So we have the 500 to 2,000 employees, like common factor. I'm also thinking, and especially in the topic that we're going to get into, which is marketing, branding, and attracting the right people. People like to know that you've successfully done what you say you want to do for them, for someone else who looks exactly like them, or at least who looks as much as possible like the position that they're in. So when you think about manufacturing, construction, food and beverages, fintech, how do you think about marketing, branding, getting in front of the right people when you have such a diverse landscape of people you can help?
Yeah, it's a great question. A couple of things. So I would say that the common theme and trend that is true across any client we work with is really organizations that are truly committed to learning and see us as being kind of an integral part of their ecosystem of learning. So typically we're working with the L&D leaders or the HR leaders, CHROs, folks in those positions. That being said, I would also say that what I really try to speak to folks is less about, hey, we worked with client X that looks just like you, and really speak to the problem that they're facing and really trying to understand, okay, your team dynamics, whether you're in a large manufacturing organization, a small fintech startup, right? Or one of my clients is like a physician, right? There's still people across all of those different organizations. And I think when we can distill it down to like, okay, there's either a problem with you as the leader and how you are leading, there's a dynamic on your team that's not working, or there's like a system level challenge. And I think that the more we can get to that problem with them and help isolate the problem and then name the ways in which we've worked with people who've experienced that, I find that an organization that looks just like them becomes less important, because now we're speaking to kind of the people problem that they're facing, which are, in my experience, kind of consistent across businesses, really like regardless of size or industry, when we can kind of distill it down to that people space.
Agreed. People are people at the end of the day. But then what the deliberate intention of diversifying then? Because it's not like, hey, we focus on this, but if you're so-and-so, that's fine. It's like, no, we are deliberately going to go for different market and industry. So why that intention in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's about having a more solid business and being able to go with influxes as economies shift. And I think we've seen right over the last 5-10 years, even how much different parts of the economy can be impacted differently. So part of it is just about having a more sustainable business. And I think it's also, though, recognizing that the tools that we offer are truly transferable, and knowing that if we can break it down into that really a simple framework for giving effective feedback, or a simple framework for coaching your teams more effectively, that intentional effort to work with all different types of leaders, I think only makes us better too, because we learn more about different industries and more challenges that maybe we haven't had as much visibility into. I'd say those are a couple factors that have gone into our thinking around that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. When you think about the positioning, right, around branding, marketing, so I think this is pretty nailed down and it makes lots of sense. At the end of the day, leaders in construction are going to face the same people challenges as leaders in food and beverages. That said, what has worked for you guys to get this attention, get this exposure to those CHROs, head of L&Ds, in those different industries? And here I'm really talking about marketing channels.
Yeah.
What has worked for you guys to get the right attention?
Yeah, I would say our number one channel is word of mouth. And so the more that people work with us and love the experience they have, the more they're willing, right, to share with their friends and talk about us. And so that has truly been kind of our number one vehicle for building our clientele. Beyond that, some other things that we've really committed ourselves to, we really want to be contributors from a thought leadership space. So we try to be as active as we can on LinkedIn and different spaces, whether it's writing articles and posts and trying to really offer insights and lessons and things that we're kind of seeing happening. We also have a monthly free workshop that we offer to folks that are in those positions in organizations. So again, in the people operations, L&D, HR, and that's really a kind of intentional design, one, to offer them something of service to them. Our experience is that folks in those roles often are super limited on resources and time. And so the more that we feel like we can actually offer them their own professional development, that just benefits the industry as a whole. And it also is an opportunity for them to really kind of taste and see what it is that we offer and how we go about doing our work. And then it also is a really cool opportunity to build community for folks. So it happens all the time where people get paired up in a random breakout room with somebody, and then they connect on LinkedIn and they, develop a broader network as a result of attending that event. So that's also been a really nice vehicle that we've tried to use. And then engagements like these. We love to kind of speak wherever we get the chance to kind of talk about the work that we do. So yeah, I would say word of mouth is the number one, and then a couple of those other things that have been helpful as well.
I love this. Talk to me about the mechanics of the workshop exactly. So I'm going to assume it's remote, right? If there are some like breakout rooms, so it's like probably on Zoom. And so
Yep.
How do you advertise that? How do you get people in? What's kind of the follow-up thought process afterwards? Because I suppose that it's to build and give back to the community for sure. I believe that anything that really works marketing-wise has the first intention of genuinely giving value first. But then what can you, because it's original. We don't get that often on the show. So how do you think about those workshops? How do you get people involved? And what happens afterwards to get those people to say like, hey, you mentioned XYZ during the workshop. We might be able to help here. Do you want to have a chat? How do you guys think about this whole process?
Yeah, great question. So we were very intentional about kind of planning the schedule around that out at least like a month or so in advance, and then we have a newsletter that we send out to our clients. We post it on LinkedIn a number of different times to kind of get people to be aware that it's happening. And then once people are there, we really bank on them having a really positive experience, and kind of our history would suggest that that's been the case, and really trying to meet the moment. So for example, like we just did one last month around happiness at work, and some of the comments on our like LinkedIn post afterwards, people speaking about it like really being like life-changing, which feels a little extreme sometimes. Like I'm always like, we're not saving the world. And though, right, people are asking themselves deeper questions than they've ever asked about their work, or really thinking about like, why is it that I'm so frustrated here every day? And so really designing, I think, a powerful experience. And then we often collect feedback after those sessions where people can have the opportunity to kind of leave their information if they want follow-up. But then we also ask them to continue the conversation. So we typically do like create a post after those events and invite people to comment on it and share on it. And that's been a really cool way to just see organically how people share, like, went to this workshop, this framework was really helpful for me. And then frequently, like, I'll get a message and like, so-and-so friend attended this thing and I'm curious to learn more. So I would say intentionally asking for their information as they want to share, but also kind of watching it organically happen has been a way that we've kind of done the follow-up afterwards with folks.
I love a good marketing funnel.
Yes.
Tell me about what happens next. So word of mouth, content, speaking opportunities, workshop once a month, and then what? How do you move from that awareness, this exposure, to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement, we rock and roll? How do you guys think about sales motion?
Yeah. So I would say that once we get people's kind of information and are able to get on a call with them, I think at that point, it's really spending the time to really understand the challenges that they're facing. I would say one thing that's incredibly important to us is really, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of like I, it versus I, thou kind of relationships. And the idea of like I, thou relationships, right? That you're really connecting with that other human and really seeing the mutual opportunity that's there, as opposed to like, you're just a means, right, to hit my revenue goals. And it's easy to say that, but I would say it's something that feels deeply embedded to our culture at NextArrow and how we interact with our clients, where you're going to get on, yes, a sales call with us, but really it's going to be 30 minutes to an hour of us trying to understand the pain points that you're having and seeing if we have a solution that we can offer you. And we really try to think about having like a layer of like unreasonable hospitality around that. And so, an L&D leader will tell us like, hey, I really could convince my executive if, and we're like, no problem. Like we'll create that one pager for you that's co-branded and marketed in your language so that your executives can understand that this is going to meet the need and the culture that you have at your business. I would say an extension of that, right, is like we have sent so many NextArrow onesies to like our clients who are having a baby and they're going to be out on, paternity, their maternity leave for the next 6 months. And I think just taking it to that next level of really connecting on that human end. And we find that like once people really connect with us and they see the work that we do and we can kind of meet the problem they're having and help try to solve it with them, the rest of that process actually feels like quite smooth because it's just based on like a true relationship that we're developing with them.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about retention, McKendree. So you come in, you help with all things, organizational developments, learning and developments, better leadership. And then what? How do you think about solving the next problem and the next problem and, basically optimizing for client retention? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah. This is where I always feel like I have like the business brain and then like my org psych brain sometimes have different opinions. And I'm actually thinking about one of my like a mentor and an advisor I had in graduate school. And he said, you've done your job really well when your client no longer needs you. And that's like it's not a great business plan, but it's an interesting philosophy of I really do. I want to get my clients to a point where we have empowered them to take that next steps. And then actually maybe they don't need us for a little bit. And then they bring us back, right, when that next need happens. And so I just say that because I've always felt a bit of a tension around I want to work with my clients forever. And also if somebody needs my coaching forever, like maybe I'm missing the mark too a little bit. So that being said, when it comes to more tactics around retention, I think that we really like to couple different things. One is we typically work with like a smaller group of leaders when we start. And so it might be a pilot group of leaders, or maybe it's a single kind of management band that we work with. And from there, we like to really then be able to expand, knowing that, the language and the frameworks that we're using are helpful if one group of managers have it, but it's even better if their senior leaders then can reinforce it. And then if individual contributors across the organization are also using that same language. And so I think it's often either expanding into greater different audiences within the business, or we also kind of think about leveling them up throughout all of our trainings as well as our coaching. So we have kind of like our foundational training for managers and that kind of first couple of workshops they get around coaching and feedback. But from there, we can then move into deeper skill sets around strategic thinking and critical and creative thinking. I find in the coaching space, sometimes I get brought in to help a leader with like a very acute problem they're having. And through the course of that work, we then recognize like, okay, well, there's actually a system problem over here that we can kind of also work through, or maybe there's some different team culture things that they hadn't considered yet. So often kind of teasing out additional problems and then just continuing to be a partner through them throughout that journey.
Love this. And is the fact of trying to diversify and going to more industries and more, different niches, is that part of this effort as well? Like, hey, we want stickiness and exploring different industries and helping different leaders so we can start from scratch in terms of like a new company and then build up from there. Is that part of that deliberate effort as well? Or how would you position it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that we often kind of come in through kind of two ways, either like an individual leader hears us somewhere, interacts with us, and it might be a one-on-one coaching engagement, or maybe it's a training just for their team. But then typically like someone in sales is like, wait, what did they get in engineering? And then, someone else in R&D is like, wait, what did they get over there? So it is that kind of opportunity to then build within a certain organization too.
I like your style, McKendree. So
Thank you.
I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball question at you now.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. What is your number one challenge right now at NextArrow? Like, what is that one nut that you guys are trying to crack that once you crack, you're gonna take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
Yeah. I might answer that in two ways. Since you like my style is typically pretty honest and transparent. So I'll tell you that I'm the head of coaching, which means I do all of the sales and marketing and the execution on those contracts. And I hate marketing, and I find it really challenging. And I shouldn't say I hate that here, but I find it really challenging, and I find it to be a skill set that is one that does not necessarily come natural. And I think I very much fall into the camp of coaches and professionals in the space who are like, let me just do the work, and I don't, and hopefully it'll just build itself. So there's the kind of individual, personal, and professional challenge I have of just continuing to build my own knowledge and partner with the right people and things. So that's kind of on the McKendree personal side. I would say on the NextArrow side, what feels like just like a constant, not necessarily like a challenge, but just a constant question mark we have is like, how do we grow and evolve in a world, right, that's like rapidly changing when we think about the world of work and the world in general, but specifically the world of work? How do we stay true to our strengths and the things that have made us who we are, and also evolve alongside it? And I think, sometimes I've watched some of our competitors maybe just like try to shift so much to what people want them to be and lose a little bit of who they are. And at the same time, if you only are rigid to who you've always been, I think you lose the opportunity to evolve. And so I think it's how do we retain that identity of who we are and also try to continue to meet the immense changes that are happening and that the leaders that we work with and the organizations and businesses are facing. How do we continue to help meet those needs, but not lose who we are? So maybe just a small example of that is like we are developing a workshop right now that's like the inner game of AI. So obviously AI is everywhere. And we know that our greatest strength isn't necessarily helping people learn how to use AI tools, but how do they actually think about the adoption of those tools and like the psychology and the identity shifts and the fear that's around that. And so trying to meet that moment, but not lose who we are, because that's what we think we can really bring to the conversation. So I'd say that's what we're kind of like noodling on right now.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I love it. And whether people face it or not, I think this is two challenges that a lot of professional service firms are facing right now. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I see them, inherently linked to each other, right? It's like, how do we adapt? And it's one thing to being fully aligned with who we are, the values, and how we want to embrace the change that is happening in the world. But it's also almost as important to communicate on it properly and to reflect that branding and positioning to the market. Back mm-hmm. to the marketing aspect of it. And yeah, you're definitely not the only one to hate marketing in the coaching space, McKendree. I can say that for sure. How are you? So I love the workshop part. And again, it's a challenge. So I imagine that it's not fully solved yet, but I think it's always interesting to hear from your peers how they think about solving a challenge that a lot of people in the audience will be facing as well. So how are you thinking? I love the workshop for the identity part. How are you thinking about solving that challenge for marketing? Like what is the thing that you're like, okay, here is the way that we're going to make sure we embed it, although we don't like it. Okay, can you like give us your thoughts on this?
Yeah. And so specifically like my challenge related to marketing, or like the, say a little bit more. I want to make sure I understand the question properly.
Sure. So two challenges, right? One, you don't like marketing, and you're part of those people who would rather do the work and let it compound, which is what's happening because you're getting referrals and word of mouth. And this is the sign of a good service, right? That said, as professional service firms scale, there needs to be at some point, at least some branding and marketing, if not a predictable acquisition channel.
Yep.
So for you guys and you specifically, McKendree, how are you thinking about merging this thing that you love to do, which is the coaching, with the marketing aspect potentially? Or how are you considering making it work regardless of the fact that you don't like it?
Yeah, great. So, part of it has just been like, for me personally, is like taking my own medicine. I'm like, if all I'm going to do is coach leaders on having courage to do something hard, like, okay, you need to do it yourself. So I've done a lot. A lot of my own, just like taking my own medicine. That being said, so I think that we really try to approach marketing as a bit of an experiment and put our bets on, okay, we recognize thought leadership matters, word of mouth matters, right? Offering services matter, and being then really deliberate with the experiments that we run around that so that we can really figure out what actually does work for the type of services that we're offering and continuing to grow the business in that way. So a couple things I think we, as I mentioned, like building a bit of a recipe around, I know for me in the coaching space, like every month, making sure I'm contributing to a certain degree from a thought leadership perspective, making sure creating engagements like these, and then wanting to really build a system around that over time once I think we really feel like we know it works. But then truly experimentation is a huge thing for us. I'll give you an example of a fun one that has not led to great success yet, but we were passionate about it. As I mentioned, like courage is really important to us. And we talk about dragons often in our workshops. So dragons represent everything that gets in the way of our courage. So we actually, our head of design built these amazing like 3D printed dragons, and we sent them to a number of organizations that have courage in their values as a way to say, like, we see you and we want to work with more companies like you. And I think that's just been like this fun thing we have done consistently throughout the history of NextArrow, is really looking for these experiments that build the brand. Even if it doesn't fully return in the way that we might hope, it feels like a way to stretch ourselves and also really be committed to who we are.
It's so funny and so good, McKendree, because so what you're describing in marketing nerds terms is account-based marketing, right? Which is going above and beyond for one specific account, and like coming up with something in the mail is one of the ways to do that. So the 3D printed dragon, that's so good. So whilst hating it, you actually do something that's is pretty efficient and pretty high level. Love it. Other side of the coin, where do you see the biggest opportunity for you and NextArrow? What is the thing that, you know, gets you excited to work on in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah. I am really continuing. I think that the it's like you want to say AI and you don't, but I really do think that the like psychology of how people are thinking about this massive transition is a space that I'm really excited to see us occupy. And I know for me, like so much of my one-on-one coaching conversations around these changes, like there is so much pressure and there is so much fear and there's so much anxiety. And so I think in a coaching space, like I want to continue to refine how do we help people get over that fear quicker, and so that they can actually have choice and really see the choices and possibility ahead of them versus that scarcity mentality that can be so limiting in how they think about change. And then I think from that like workshop perspective is how do we keep like just continuing to meet that need, but also like grow with how things are evolving. So we've got kind of our own things we're working on internally of future products in the AI space that I think could be really cool and additional services to people. So I'm excited to like change alongside everybody else and at the same time try to offer a little bit of thought leadership as we do that.
McKendree Hickory, ladies and gentlemen. McKendree, this was absolutely great. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast. If people want to find out more about you, see what you guys do, where should they go?
Yeah, you can check us out at nextarrow.org. And as I mentioned, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So that's another great way to connect with us. I would say those are two great places to start.
We'll put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure, it's that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, we are now connected. McKendree, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.